Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Good to see you guys. We've got a special guest joining us. Oh, sorry, hang on a second. Technical difficulties.
Please hold, caller. Fultonland Emergency Services will be with you shortly. Please state the nature of your emergency. What's that? Sorry? Yeah, you say the comic industry has completely disappeared up its own. Oh, I see. Okay. Well, we can get a crew out to you. No problem. Thanks very much, caller. Bye-bye.
Your emergency services dispatchers are much nicer than ours.
Oh, they are. They are very nice, actually. Yes. I haven't had a chance to call them on many occasions, but yes, they are.
Yeah.
Pleasant.
So in the US, the number is 911, and in the UK, is it 999?
It's now 911 as well.
Oh,
Because
okay.
for some reason, there are lots of people in positions of power who feel the need to copy everything that happens in America.
Oh, well, I'm sure that will work out splendidly for you then.
I'm sure it will. We're just waiting for a president.
You know what? Speaking of speaking of good leadership, let's bring on our guest today, who has been, well, he's the publisher that I want to be if I ever grow up.
Oh,
Please
bless.
welcome to the show, Mr. Peter Simeti.
I've never had that intro before. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
I'm the publisher I want to be when I grow up, too.
I used to not want to grow up because I was a Toys R Us kid, but then Toys R Us disappeared, and I thought, oh well, I guess now I have to grow up.
That's my new name, Toys R Us.
Well, I just go, I don't want to grow up. I'm a comic book kid.
Yeah. Why ever do it? Why would you ever do that?
Oh, so thanks for joining us today, Pete. I've really had a great time. I found Alterna in 2018, and I've had a great time watching Alterna thrive over the last few years. And correct me if I'm wrong, but last time I checked, Alterna had record sales growth in 2018, 2019, believe it or not, in 2020. I haven't checked in on 2021 yet, but
2021 is kind of up in the air right now because we're waiting to fill that Indiegogo. I'm getting those books in next week, and then we can actually finally start putting out new books very, very soon. But right now it's up in the air. I have a feeling that we're going to have a really strong second half of 2021.
Mm.
And all this in the face of virtually every other publisher I can think of. Now, there may be some that I'm missing because there's a lot of indie publishers and it's impossible to keep track of all of them. But I generally like to keep my ear to the ground in the mainstream half of the industry as well as the independent side of the industry. And it seems to me like there has been virtually nothing but disappointment and misery as far as sales are concerned. And now there's some readers who are happy with what they've gotten over the last few years, but that number of the readers who are happy seems to be shrinking every year. And in the case of some publishers, the readership has been shrinking drastically. So I thought it would be not only an interesting and enjoyable conversation to have with you about how Alterna has been successful while the competition has been so unsuccessful. But I also thought that it would be interesting if we could try to identify at least one of the components that I think is a critical part of the comic industry at large, the downfall that they've had, separate and apart from the global pandemic there's obviously factors tied to that, but
yeah, that exacerbated the situation, but it wasn't like it was doing fine and dandy before
yeah,
then, you know.
yeah, exactly. So it accelerated and exacerbated problems that were already in place and already had been growing. So, but before we get too far into that conversation, I just want to say hello to everybody in the chat. We really appreciate you guys joining us this morning. We've got Jackson Zelda, Statistical Zero, SDA, Eric McIntyre, George Travlos, Johnny Rando, and anybody else who might be lurking today, and certainly everybody who's going to catch the show on replay. We really appreciate you joining us. So I'd like to start with, if you don't mind, Pete, what was more or less the state of Alterna in 2017 before you guys started having year-over-year growth that was so that was I don't know if you would characterize it this way. I'll just characterize it how I saw it as an outsider, someone who was new to Alterna, and then became a big Alterna customer and has stayed that way for the last several years. And then you can kind of clue me in on what it was like from the publishing perspective.
Sure.
So where I came in at in 2018, I discovered Alterna probably early to mid 2018. And I thought, oh, okay, this is really cool. There's a publisher who's bringing back newsprint. I love this. And then I looked at some of the titles, and I was thinking, yeah, some of this stuff looks like, books that I would want to read. I'd want to pick up off the shelf. Some of it, probably not. And then others I really didn't know. But the great thing was that the price point was low enough that I felt like I could take a gamble. And if I didn't, if I read, let's say, Eden, and I didn't like it, I didn't feel like I wasted my money. I felt like the chance I took on the book, and the way that the company was presented in terms of customer service, I felt like, now it just so happens that I read Eden and I really enjoyed it, and I ended up buying the
great book.
paperback, and I've got nothing but good things to say about it. But if I didn't like it, I wouldn't have felt like my money was wasted or my time was wasted by trying out something new.
Yeah, I think it's virtually, and I mean, I'm going to say this because I'm very biased in this opinion as well, but it's virtually impossible to purchase an Alterna Comics single issue and feel like you've been ripped off. It's just, yeah. I mean, it's $1.50. Some of them were 99 cents on the reprint line when we had ICYMI out, and now they're like $1.99, and we've got like $4.99 80-page giants that are kind of like bare bones trade paperback graphic novels that are like 80 pages or more. It really is. It's virtually impossible to feel like, okay, after you read the book, even if you didn't like it, that you're like, I feel ripped off here. I don't think I could ever try another Alterna book again. So if anything, the price point, and the newsprint allows us to do this, but the price point really, I think, opened up a huge amount of people to us. Whereas before, for those that don't know, Alterna, we started off, we put out print-on-demand books for like a year or two. Then we got distribution, and we went pretty much solely graphic novels. We had digital issues and things like that too. We were one of the first publishers to go digital, but it wasn't really a single issue company. It was graphic novels, trades. It just worked with creator schedules, and they usually had day jobs and things like that. So instead of putting out, 3 or 4 issues a year, we put out 1 or 2 graphic novels, and it just seemed like, oh, okay, that's not that bad of a wait for a bigger book. The industry was like, no, that's not going to happen. Graphic novels are not going to take on like that. You can't do that. You're going to go under. And there was a time or two that we did, but it wasn't because of the graphic novels. It was because of several other things that were going on at the time. But we clawed our way out of those problems and overcame them. But then by 2015, the same industry that told me that that's not going to work, they were flooding the market with graphic novels to the point that we were seeing the turnaround time at book distribution where they're returnable. It turned into like a month. They would give you like minimum 3 months before for the books to sell, but usually like 6 months to a year. Then it was turning into a month turnaround time for a graphic novel. The graphic novels were being treated like periodicals, like single issues.
Yeah.
So I was like, the whole market's getting flooded. Our sales are plateauing and in some cases declining. We have to do something. I got to put out single issues, but I don't want to put out single issues at $3.99 a piece. I hate that glossy matte this paper single issue thing. I love the newsprint. That's what I grew up with. That's what comic books are newsprint to me. Doesn't mean that I don't have ones that aren't on newsprint. It's just when I automatically go to a comic book store, I go to the back issue bin. I dig through everything about it, the smell, the look. There's a warmth to the paper. There's a warmth to the art because of the newsprint too. It adds like a second dimension, a little underlayer, like an underpainting, you know, when you have the luminescence that comes through. That's what the newsprint to me does with colors. So I didn't know if we could do it, but I found printers that could. And we started putting out the newsprint single issues. We made them more affordable because it was more affordable to print that way. And I figured, okay, we'll put these prices at whatever we can make them without losing money. And so that's what we did. $1.50, I think we debuted with issues, and they took off. And I found that, and this part's really funny too, right? We all hear in the comic industry, the graphic novels, right? That's the big seller. That's the thing that's out there. That's the thing that gives legitimacy to comics. That's the thing that's going to find the new readers. Okay, so graphic novel sales, for those that keep track of comics, and I'm not talking about like Diary of a Wimpy Kid or Captain Underpants or whatever. I'm talking about superhero, diamond distributed, that kind of thing, graphic novels. Those are like a 10th to a 15th of their single issue counterpart in terms of readership and sales. So, of course, when we put out these issues on newsprint, we originally just had a lot of these issues that were graphic novels. We broke them up, had new covers, and we put them up as single issues.
And just to interrupt for one moment, sorry to do this, but I just want to make it clear to everybody. This was 2017, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and I just wanted to let everybody in the chat know, I wanted to give people a chance to filter in, and I'll mention this again towards the end of the show, but for those who are able to make it live here today, I'm gonna just let you guys know, and I want to give everybody who watches the show on the replay a chance at this as well. So don't worry, you guys who are watching on the replay, you're included. Pay attention to the show, to what Pete's saying. I'm gonna pull a trivia question out of our conversation, and next week's show, while we're live, I'm gonna pose that trivia question to everybody, and the first person who can post the answer in the chat is going to win a bundle of Alterna Comics, free of charge, no shipping. I'll pay for shipping. And I want to just make it clear that Pete has.
I was going to say I didn't agree with this. What the heck?
Pete has nothing to do with this. These are not Alterna Comics coming from the publishing office. These are Alterna Comics coming out of my private collection. I've been buying just about everything Alterna makes for the last 3 years. And one of the reasons that I've been stockpiling issues and I'm getting doubles and sometimes even triples is because I knew that when I launched my own channel, I would be doing giveaways. And one of the things that I wanted to do was give away bundles of Alterna Comics and hopefully get them into the hands of people who have never read them before.
Oh, very nice.
So with all of that being said, so Pete, we're in 2017, and you're being told by the competition, by the critics, that graphic novels are where it's at, and you're silly, or you're foolish, or you're stupid for doing these newsprint single issues.
Yeah, everything I've done in the comic industry, they tell me I'm stupid, foolish, silly, and I shouldn't do any of it.
But you think at this time that you're onto something here. And this is one of the first points kind of in the timeline that we're going to go through of Alterna Comics over the last few years where you guys have had such great success. This is one of those times where you as a publisher are faced with this question of, and you please correct me if I get any of this wrong, but I would imagine that this is a point where you have to think, well, what do I think is the right thing to do for the business? Is it to listen to what these other people are saying, or is it to do what I think is the right thing to do based on the information that I have, based on where I want my company to go? I've got to decide what is right, what is wrong, and then once I decide what is right, I'm just going to do it regardless of what others say. Is that a fair summation?
Yes and no. I mean, when it comes to stuff like that, and I think, are you referencing what had occurred in 2018 with the pylon and things like that, and Comicsgate and that kind of thing?
I'm gonna get to that.
Okay.
But
are you referencing, like newsprint single issues and moving in that direction?
I'm wondering if in newsprint, the newsprint decision in 2017, I'm wondering if you had start getting put into a position yet of having to say, I think this is the right thing to do, therefore I'm going to do it. Now the consequences will fall where they may, but I think this is the right thing to do for the business, therefore I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I think every single thing in business is, especially if you want to grow, you have to take small calculated risks, and you have to assess the situation and then say, okay, can we do this? We can. Let's give it a try. Honestly, the newsprint single issues, it was going to be just maybe 10 different titles, and if they didn't work out, they didn't work out.
Okay.
And but I just wanted to put out at least something again on newsprint. I missed it so much. It's one of those things where I looked every single year to try to see if someone else was doing it and see if I could pick their brain about it. And I would always look back and search the internet, and I'd always just find my same post on digital webbing from 2005 or something, asking people, anyone print comics like this anymore? The post might still be there. I don't know if the forum is still up, but every year that's what I would find. It would just be me asking again, and then me looking at the forum post of me asking. No one was doing it. And once we discovered how to do it, once we discovered it was possible and that it was affordable to do it, there's some learning curves and things like that. You have to learn how to separate the colors. You have to learn how to separate the layers with the text. And so we had to learn that first wave or two, the first 2 months of it in May and June, I think, of 2017, how to do it properly. But after that, it's been fine. And at this point, it's just old hat. But it's something that I've never been prone to saying, let me do the thing that everyone else is doing, and then that'll be safe. If anything, I've always tried to do the thing that everyone else is not doing. I zig when they zag. So, because there's always going to be, when they move away from something, there's a vacuum that is now everyone's going, hey, I liked the stuff that was. Why is that not there?
Now you've had pushback, haven't you? On
yeah, we got a lot of pushback when it initially came out. We got people even in the industry, creators and retailers, saying how that was going to be the doom of the industry by putting that out there and getting the price point low like that. And I was like, what are you talking about? Just sell 2 issues instead of 1 and you make your money for the $3
That's
book.
the salvation of the industry.
But then I learned they were freaking out because they don't know how to sell 2 copies because they barely know how to sell 1.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the criticism of you back then, not just of Alterna as a publishing company, but of you personally as the publisher, the criticism was that, quote unquote, you were trying to undercut, everybody else. And what you were doing that you thought was good for you and good for Alterna readers was, quote unquote, bad for them. And it wasn't what you should be doing. Yeah.
I mean, the whole industry's, how do we grow more readers? How do we get out there? How do we do this, do that? Well, one of the things is price point. It's been price point for a while because of the fact that the price is not commensurate with the value. If we were getting really good value and the books were, like in some cases with a lot of these crowdfunded books, if they're $20-25, but you're getting a tremendous value, the book is signed, there's all extras, the quality in the book is great, so it's like you look at it, you go $20, that's a no-brainer. But then when there's a $20, single issue and it's out by one of the bigger companies and it's completely half-assed, you just laugh in their face. I mean, people laugh in their face now when they're $5 and they're completely half-assed. So the price was an issue. The accessibility was an issue. So I always say it was the 3 A's to me. It was affordability, accessibility, and availability. So affordability, obviously, that's the price. Accessibility is being able to get into the story rather quickly, which means that you should pick up that issue and be able to enjoy that issue, period. You can have overlying arcs, you can have subplots, you can have all these other things, but you got to know how to get people caught up and acclimated quickly. You
As
do that with
opposed-
strong characterization, and you do that with plots that are very easy to pick up on.
As opposed to making the reader wade through 15 pages of dialogue as the two characters are sitting in a coffee shop, talking about who knows what, and you're just wondering, okay, well, when do we get into the story?
Yeah. Nothing grabs the reader's attention more than actual things occurring, and usually through the art. You should be able to just look at the art on every single page and go, I got the story.
Yeah.
And then the bonus is the writing. Not that you're just wading through writing and you can't make heads or tails of what's going on by looking at the art. It's a visual medium, comic books. And then the next thing, availability. So books have to be available. They have to be at places. They have to be accessible, available, affordable. And even though there's distribution for comics, and it's just pretty much a sole distributor with Diamond, they're not really doing everything that they should to get these books in as many places as possible. And they're also not doing anything that we experience, that they don't even take care of reorders. So we lost about 16,000 reorders in total over the course of 2.5 years of newsprint single issues. I can't imagine what other publishers are losing, probably even more.
Yeah.
So they're not even getting the books to the retailers and to the readers that people are actually ordering.
Mm-hmm.
And they're sitting here. We took care of them by building a site to sell direct. If we didn't do that and we just depended solely on Diamond, we would have been gone within that first year.
And so many independent publishers, they start up, their company, and they try to quote unquote play by the rules, which means go through Diamond, which, I'm not going to get into all of the nitty gritty details of what that means, but it's not easy. It was very inefficient, to put it kindly, for any publishing company, but for an indie press especially, there were extra hoops you had to jump through. So if you couldn't make it within the first year or two, you were almost certainly not going to make it at all.
Diamond was a closed loop anyway, because they were even making editorial decisions. They were basically saying, "Oh, well, we don't like the look of your book; it's not going to sell." So even if you could come up with the numbers,
early on that happened to us twice. The second time it happened, I said, "Look, you don't tell us what kind of books to publish. If we don't sell them through you, we're going to sell them. You're just going to miss out on sales, and so are the retailers." And they're like, "Okay." And then they never did it again.
That actually is a great segue into my next question for you, Pete, which was, so in 2017, you publish your single issue newsprint floppies, and, contrary to the so-called wisdom of your competitors, they are selling great. So you're in 2018 and you've got all these newsprint floppies that are selling. And was it in, because we were talking about distribution just a second ago and Diamond, so was it in 2018 or 2019 that you decided to go into newsstand distribution?
It was 2017.
Oh, it was 2017. Okay, so then
right off the bat.
So then by 2018, you've got books that are in comic shops, single issue floppies, in addition to your graphic novels. You've got single issue floppies in comic shops, and you've also got them in retail locations outside of comic shops.
Yeah, they were in Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. They were in several dozen independent newsstands. Like there was one in Rockefeller Center in New York. There was a couple overseas in Germany, Italy, UK. But what I was finding was, even though we would stagger the releases, so comic shops would get the releases first, and then 2 months later, those releases would come to newsstand. And my mentality was thinking, okay, just in time for someone to discover the issue on the newsstand, when they want to find the newest issue, they can go right to the comic shop and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So the newsstand was always a loss leader in my mind. It was to catch that casual reader. Someone maybe didn't see comics before or whatever. They would see it, check it out, the price tag. We would have ads in the books that would direct people to the comic shop. And then they would find, hopefully, a local comic shop by them if they had one.
Right.
Much to my surprise, even though I shouldn't have been surprised, comic shops didn't like that. They were very, very upset that we had those issues being even 2 months later on newsstand. And I would meet them back with the argument of, well, do you carry Funko Pops? Do you carry things that are sold in other places? If you do, you should kind of shut up. Because seriously, why do you think those things are popular and selling in your store? Because they're everywhere else.
Yeah.
They're everywhere else. And then the business trickles down to you. Why do you think comic shop sales? Why do you think you're struggling with a lot of these new comics? Because they are nowhere else. Because they don't exist to people anymore. So many signings. I did conventions even when people would come up to us and go, "Oh, these are new comics?" I'm like, "Yeah, these are new." And I would think they're, the newsprint, the price point, they're confused.
Right.
They just go into the conversation. I'm finding out they go, "I didn't think they made new comics anymore."
Yep.
At a comic convention, I had that conversation 3 times, 3 different shows. And I said, "Oh yeah, there's tons of new comics here." I was like, "Did you not realize?" And they're like, "I thought all of these were just like collectibles and they were older and no one was making new comics anymore."
That's a fantastic illustration of the casual. So there's a difference between the hardcore comic book reader, the casual comic book reader, and then the quote unquote normie who doesn't have experience reading comics, but if they are made available to them, as you were talking about, affordability, accessibility, and then availability, if they're made available, then the person who is window shopping or they're browsing, or like these folks you ran into at the convention, they just thought it might be a fun thing to go see what was around without really knowing the ins and outs of the convention.
And they all walked away with at least 5 issues of our books too.
We all started off as casual comics buyers.
Yeah,
all of us of a certain age, because you'd walk into a local 7-Eleven, whatever it might be, a newsagent over here, and there would be comics on down there with the newspapers, and you'd pick one up, and you never knew whether you were going to get another one or not, which is another reason why all stories should be accessible, and why it was this kind of pulp entertainment that you could dive in and out of and go and pick those comics up. And the trouble is people talk about a potential new audience. Where are we going to get our new audiences from? Well, we cut our new audience off at the knees when we took it out of the newsstand and put it only into the direct market. Okay, of course the direct market can survive if they're out on the newsstand as well. Like exactly as Pete's saying, like it floats everywhere. Everybody can see the product. But if kids, it doesn't matter whether they're into their video games or in their phone or whatever, if they don't see a comic in a shop at eye level, they're never going to know they exist. Okay, and in a potential market of, what have you got in the US? 500 million people to 1/3 of a billion people.
A third of a billion. Yeah.
1/3 of a billion. So you must have 100 million kids at least, wandering around. That's a big pool. That's a massive market. Okay, and if they're there sitting on a shop shelf, and the kids can see them, a percentage of those kids are going to pick those books up, because it doesn't matter whether they're into these new things or not. Comics do attract kids. Kids like them. Okay, not all kids. Not all kids are the same, but there's always a percentage of kids that likes comics.
Yeah, and they're never going to know what speaks to them if they don't see it.
Exactly. If it's not there, they ain't going to buy it, and that's where your new market comes from. Not by going stretching out into some demographic that doesn't exist.
So I got a question here, Pete. We're now in 2018, where you've had single issue floppy. Where I'm not going to ask you to actually relive anything you don't want to relive.
That's fine. At this point, it's all just ridiculousness.
So we're in 2018, and you've got however many months of selling your single issue newsprint comics in comic shops, and you're also you've got newsstand distribution. So you're in Barnes and Noble and Books A Million, and your various other outlets. And so you got some complaints from comic shops, and you answered those complaints, I think, quite well. At that point, did you feel like your ethics were being challenged by these people who were saying, "Hey, what do you think you're doing with this distribution thing? You should only be selling to comic shops, not doing this other thing. You're hurting our business," or blah blah, whatever it was. At that point, did you think, or did it feel like, as a business professional, that your ethics were being called into question?
Well, we had retailers right off the bat when they found out that we sold into newsstands too. They said, well, as long as you sell through newsstands, we're not putting any books in the store.
Okay.
And I was like, all right, you do what you got to do. If you want to hurt your business, that's cool. Because that's all they end up doing. At that point in time, I was very firm in the fact that, and we already had established also, we were selling on Etsy at that point. I didn't think we were, we needed to build a website yet. I didn't think the demand was that strong. I honestly wasn't aware of all the problems that would arise, that the reorder situation would be awful, that retailers would be pretty much outright boycotting us for multiple different reasons. And this was even before Comicsgate. I wasn't aware of all of that. I wasn't aware that the readers would be having so much trouble. I wasn't aware that I would be getting emails from readers saying that they're going to be paying like 3 to 4 times the amount on eBay for our books. And I had books sitting right here. And I'm like, man, it's because of this, secondary market. It's one thing if it's an out of print book, if it's something like that, but I would hate for the reader to have to pay that much money when I've got perfectly good books, hundreds of them just sitting over here because we overprint, because we're ready for reorders. So when we sold direct, they didn't like that either. Retailers, comic industry, they don't like anything I ever do about anything. Which is why I'm so glad I don't have to impress 90.9999% of them anymore.
Yeah.
But, all these things I did was because that's how I had to run things, to run my own business. If the whole comic industry was more concerned, if every single person in the comic industry was more concerned about how do I run my business as effectively as I possibly can, the whole industry would be great right now.
Yeah, I agree.
Everyone's in each other's business and, hey, you shouldn't do that. Hey, you should do this. Hey, why are you doing it like that? And if you do it like this, I'm going to not carry your book. I'm going to make sure maybe even something worse happens to you. Because we have so much of this weird bullshit that happens in the comic industry, we have an industry that all you needed was this one little, anything to come along and it falls like a house of cards. But
so I think that is a good way to put it, a house of cards. There was this industry that had been around for many decades, and it went through a pretty bad contraction, as we like to say in business. It basically, in the mid to late 90s, the comic book industry crashed. Now, it didn't go away completely, but it was basically the house of cards collapsed, except for maybe the very last layer, the bottom layer. And it was incumbent upon leadership.
Well, foundationally, it's a very insecure industry. And it starts because the leadership at the top, and I use the term extremely loosely, is not leadership at all. It is all a fear intimidation game. It is all about making you think that you can't possibly do it any other way other than through them. Yeah. And if you do, I mean, honestly, even look at the image dudes. It was the same crap for them in terms of like, oh yeah, good luck. You're not going to be successful. You guys are a bunch of jokes, and yeah, they had their struggles, but imagine if they also had the wherewithal at the time. Like if Image had started, let's say in 2010 or 2015, as opposed to, 1991, 92, whatever it may have been, it would be a very different ball game. The access to information would have been a lot easier, how to spread the word about their company. They would have destroyed both of the big two with all of those tools in place. They almost did destroy them with barely anything that they really had in terms of infrastructure. So that's how the comic industry has been built for a while now, and built on the predication of a lot of different things occurring because of the predatory tactics they like to use, not just on readers or retailers, but also on creators, and then also on each other, and then it's all under the guise of we're all just one big family, though. We all just pull for each other. Until you step out of line and you start doing something off the beaten path, and it becomes enemy, destroy. And that's what we had experienced several different times over the course of our 15 years, well before anything was Comicsgate. And people think like that kind of thing happened overnight. This kind of, all of a sudden, they didn't like identity politics or something in the books, and then everyone lost their mind. No, this was building up for years and years and years prior. And a lot of this stuff, again, it is based off of that foundational premise of insecurity that everyone has within the industry. And it's all about get you before they get me. And it's no surprise then that they run with sometimes these unbelievable weird smear and defamation campaigns. It's all about destruction rather than creation. And I'm more about creation. I don't want to tear anybody down. I don't want to destroy anyone. I want to compete. And through the competition, we'll get something really good, and then everyone benefits. But when you don't want to have competition, when you don't want to have that drive to create something better and something that people might really like and enjoy, and everyone's trying to figure out how to do it, what you have is a race to the bottom. And now all the quality just disappears, and the floor comes out from underneath you, and you're all wondering, why are we in free fall as we go towards our deaths?
Yeah, we were having a discussion earlier about this, and it's this mindset of, instead of throwing it at the wall and seeing what sticks, going out there as a meritocracy and working hard to see if you can make something really good and get attention for it. It's easier to just abuse other people, to tear something else down to make it a lower level you have to hit in order to make your stuff more popular or sell well or whatever it would, or get the attention that you feel it deserves, because you can't possibly get that attention while you're at a low level of ability or a low level of creativity, because these other people are better than you, basically. So that's why meritocracy is such a bad word in a lot of these people's minds. And that's not the way an industry grows or even continues to exist.
That's how
you need to have meritocracy. You need to have a market. You need to have competitive ideas in order to improve the standard constantly. And if all you do is go around saying, accusing other people or tearing other people down just to make yourself feel better, then that's no industry at all.
You have to have people that question the status quo while respecting what came before. And respecting what makes things important and well loved. And we had a lot of people that questioned the status quo, but in doing so, they seek to destroy what came before, and there's no respect for it. And there's absolutely no respect for those who love what came before. No. So you had this for a long time in comics, where it was almost like a carrying of the torch feel, from creative team to creative team, from EIC to EIC. And every now and then it'd feel like a misstep, but largely didn't feel like there were too many. And they would course correct kind of quickly. And
there
then
was
all of a sudden,
generational knowledge that was passed on.
Passing the baton over and over again. It was a lot like in sports. It felt like, the players became the coaches, became the GM, et cetera, et cetera. The farm team rises up and over again. So you had this love and respect and everything along the way. But in comics, there all of a sudden became this weird hard line of, well, we don't really want to keep having this passing of the torch kind of thing occurring. So what we're going to do is we're going to get in new people and if they have irreverence to what came before, all the better. And with that irreverence came also an irreverence to the fans that loved those things too. Now, when you're talking about indie comics and creator owned, and this is what I love about it so much, I find so many readers that are out there that have actually left those bigger companies because of those kinds of things, and say, look, if I'm going to have to be forced to buy something that doesn't look like anything I've ever seen before, I want to buy it from people who are actually passionate about the characters, the stories, and want us to be a part of it. So that's largely what I found a lot of these creator-owned indie kind of readers are. Whereas a lot of the big two readers that have been very mistreated over the years, it's kind of become like they're very jaded, and it's turned into this thing of, I think they feel lost. They feel like, well, I'll just cling on because it's like, I got to collect the issue. I have to, stay through with the run. And all the while they're getting disrespected the whole time. Come over to the indies, come over to creator owned. You might not recognize things at first, but you'll get acclimated real quickly. People love the readers over here, not just at Alterna, but indies and creator owned in general. Like, everybody is all, I've met some of the greatest people in the world by doing this. And especially too, even in Comicsgate, is everything perfect? No, nothing's perfect. But if I look at the industry that I left, do I look at that and go, it was so great, I just loved everything about it? No, absolutely not. But oh my Lord, it's so different over here. Everything about being in this time frame right now, creating comics, is so different than even 10 or 15 years ago.
You've got to say that as much as we've spoken about the I suppose the destruction of the industry, it's still there in its bare bones, but it's a shadow of its former self. And the things that have happened over the last year and what's happened to Diamond, it's actually created an environment of opportunity.
Yeah, people are zigging. when they zag. They're doing exactly. And I've been waiting since I started getting into the comic industry to see stuff like this happen, where it was this unification, this symbiotic relationship, to get comic booky with it, of basically fan and creator. And publisher and understanding that, you know, one can't exist without the other. Hey, we need both, you know, we need each other. And yeah, I'm at a convention or whatever it is, and I'm on this side of the table and you're on that side of the table, but that don't mean anything. Let me come around to the front, which honestly is oftentimes I would actually physically do that, because I hate that idea of a barrier between, because I love comics. I'm a fan of comics as well. That's what I got into comics for. Yeah. So to treat it as if, okay, the readers are separate from me because I am almighty and elite and I create the story and you just are a simpleton who reads them. I hate that shit. That's such bullshit. And it's that attitude, that weird, you know, air of elitism that occurs in comics sometimes with some of these creators and especially some of the higher ups. It is the downfall, the utter complete downfall. It's the attitude, and it's not there. It's not there with a lot of these creator-owned guys, but it's their big time. That elitist air is there big time in a lot of these corporate scenarios where they just think, you know, hey, we're the ones making the stuff. You know, you're just supposed to read it and shut up. No.
They're the lifeblood. The people that read the books are the lifeblood of the industry. So simple as
have a conversation with, and that's what they used to do. It used to. I mean, how many times did you read letters columns, and it would be like a lot of the letters would be, you know, hey, you made this mistake, you made this, and they had fun with it, and everyone understood. As long as you all understood, hey, this is all part of it.
Yeah, I think
it was awesome.
That connection you used to get, especially in old letters pages in Marvel. And Stanley would answer them, or obviously someone would answer them, whether it was Stanley or not. But he had that face. He faced the whole thing up, and it made you feel like you were connected. Certainly, as a kid, I felt whenever I read a Marvel comic, I was part of a big family of Marvel. Yeah. Okay, and I was connected with that. And I think something that crowdfunding in general and independent books bring is that connection. And that's where the opportunities are, because if you can really connect with people, you're right, we're all fans. So why set yourself apart? Just because one of you creates content and the other one only, you know, takes it in, that doesn't make you any different. You're all just fans of comics. So, you know, treat each other with respect.
And let's just have fun with it. If someone pokes back about something, like even the whole J. Scott Campbell thing that's going on right now, you know, someone pokes fun at him, he pokes fun back, you know, and as long as people can take it that way, that's great. If it turns into a weird, ugly thing, like for some people, it gets really ugly really fast, which honestly to me is what, and I saw it from the beginning, that's what's created Comicsgate, was a lot of these pros getting real ugly real fast, 0 to 60. You know, you'd be like, hey, why are you doing this with this character? What, you don't like it because you're racist and you're a bigot? And it's like, whoa, what the?
Like, where did you pull that one out from?
Well, and that takes us into let's say I'll start with mid 2018, and then we'll go into later 2018, where you've got this group Comicsgate, which up until, you know, let's say April of 2018 had essentially been a group of comic book readers who didn't like what the publishers of the books were doing with the characters and the stories. And they thought, well, surely if we get enough of us together and we let them know, hey, this is why we stopped buying the books. We really want to buy the books again. So could you please go back to the way you guys used to tell stories without all of the personal agendas and the socio-political propaganda? Could you just make it escapist entertainment again? Because we really want to buy these books, but we're not going to pay money to you to be told that we're bigots for not buying these ridiculous well, you're calling them comics, but it's more like, you know, political pamphlets sandwiched between comic book covers. And so Comicsgate was nothing more than just a group of readers who were asking publishers to go back to the type of escapist entertainment that they used to be able to buy. And then...
Well, see, I have a different theory, too, on the term of Comicsgate. I think they beat everybody to the punch because there is a scandal within comics. There is a power dynamic that's gone askew in comics. There is abuse of power in comics. There are people being kept out from participating and telling their stories and being elevated based on their merits, based on their worth, not based on their identity or who they are or anything that they can tokenize and then weaponize against people, whether it be fans, new or old. And I honestly feel that whole thing was a distraction campaign to shift people away completely from the poor industry tactics going on, from people not being paid properly, from people not being treated properly at that point in time. You remember like all these different creators at that point in time that were dying broke and penniless, like Dave Cockrum, who allegedly like passed away in his Spidey PJs, broke and penniless. I mean, that guy was a legend. That should not happen whatsoever. Yeah, even with Stan Lee, the mistreatment that occurred to him towards the end of his days. You know, the comic industry is well known for their abuse of creators. You know, so there is a comics gate in the terms of the ugliness of the word, but not in terms of now what has been co-opted to describe what's occurring. But I think they were beating people to the punch and saying, no, vilify these people over there because they're the ones raising attention about all of these things that are occurring, all of these malpractice type stuff that's occurring in the industry. And if we vilify them and say that they're the worst of the worst, don't believe a word that bigot says, then all of a sudden their arguments that they bring up, it turns into, oh, well, who's going to listen to you? You're a hateful, racist bigot.
Right.
And there's concrete arguments being brought up by so many of these people, creators, fans, even former pros as well. Yeah. And as soon as that happens, you must be Comicsgate. You must be one of those bigots. Well, they've trained people well to believe that. This way, again, you don't pay attention to the actual thing that's occurring, which is killing the industry.
Right. And this is where it takes moral courage for people to stand up and say, this is right, this is wrong, and you guys are doing wrong. So what's it going to take for you guys to get back to doing right? Because at the end of the day, comic readers just want to buy good comics. They want to buy comics that provide escapist entertainment. They want to... life is difficult enough as it is, real life, without having to have these creators and publishing executives try and put real life into the pages of comics in the form of, you know, socio-political declarations of this or that. So it takes...
There's like 30 news channels out there. People don't get enough news.
Yeah, exactly. Not to mention the endless options on the internet for the same thing. So it got to a point where, personally, I think the mid to late 90s, when the industry crashed, I think it broke, quote unquote, a lot of long-term professionals. Yeah. And I think they were so scared of their entire livelihood, and in a lot of cases their personal identity just going away and never coming back, so that I think that in the 2000s there was a lot of decisions made at the executive level and senior management level of these corporate publishers to try to put band-aids over problems that required surgery, because they just wanted to keep everything together. They just...
Tis but a scratch.
They didn't want to... Yeah, exactly. They didn't want everything to go away. And I think because they were afraid of losing what they had, they were desperate. And so desperate people often make decisions that are not well thought out. You know, they're not strategic. They're just emotional. They're reactionary. And it's in the moment, because they're not looking at what consequences of those decisions will produce.
Well, if we want to go back real far, my theory is that when Image was formed and that top talent left, it sent like the biggest chill up all corporate spine across the board. So with that whole thing, they're like, how do we compete now? This big talent, these monsters are leaving and forming their own thing together. Holy crap, what do we do? Okay, well, let's make it ridiculous. Let's kill off, Superman. Let's break Batman. Let's go all for broke. Let's rip the adamantium out of Wolverine. Let's make it all crazy, and then we can bring it all back again and hopefully double dip on the sales. Yeah. Now, what you do there, if the story isn't solid, which in some cases it was, in some cases it was, when you have that high that you're riding and you're getting that attention, now it turns into, how do we keep doing that? How do we keep stealing attention away from those guys? Because if they could have vilified them and some of them actually were vilified in certain ways, personally. But if they could do it today, they would vilify them the same way that you see people in comics getting vilified today. And it's all about, again, distraction and defamation to try to compete, instead of competing, destroying. So they put out these gimmick type books. They put out these things that they know they can't compete against this talent. So they're competing now with gimmicks. So they put all these different covers out and all this other kind of stuff and make everything a collector's item and really try to capitalize on, no, these are collectibles and they're probably going to pay for, your kid's college or a new house or whatever one day. So buy them all up, get them in the box, the whole case, take it home. So then when the industry was riding high on that, and then everyone, all of a sudden the bubble burst and they're like, oh man, well, the collectors, they're not showing up anymore. All this other stuff, it turns into what happens? Oh, the fans and the collectors are blamed, not the practices by the publishers.
Exactly.
Not what they were doing when they were in excess and greed and they couldn't compete with quality. Now we see again today, it's gimmicky again, variant covers all over the place. It's quantity, not quality. Instead of paying for the talent, the really top talent to deliver and shrink your line of books. And instead of spreading yourself thin, because it's an effort. Why? To buy up shelf space so that someone else doesn't come in there and put a book on there that grows and competes and turns into a Ninja Turtles or a Walking Dead or something else. Yeah, something else that takes away their money on a merchandising, film, television level, which is the big money.
Yeah. I think also once you start getting into situations where these publishers get bought by even larger corporations, I think it used to be the case back in the day. They were still businesses. Marvel was still a business. DC was still a business, but their business was comic books.
Yeah.
They got into IP, and they started making, they got advertising, and they did lunch boxes and stuff, and that's all very well. It was peripheral. Their main business was making comics, and that was where the passion was, and the passion came from the top down. Okay. Now,
how do we make the best comics possible?
Exactly.
And then it slowly eroded into, oh man. And then the more and more you do that, and that's the funny part, right? Marvel gets into Heroes World distribution right at the stupidest possible time because you just lost all your top talent. Now, if you did that when you had McFarlane and Lee and all those guys, well, maybe you could have crushed everything and really done it really well. But you did it. Why? It was another effort to do a distraction campaign to make sure that, oh, no, pay attention to us now. We're stepping away and, just buy up Marvel and do all that. And of course, a lot of missteps were taken and they got dug a hole deeper and deeper for themselves, went into bankruptcy, sold off the rights for different things, got into the same situation that bit them in the ass about 10, 15, 20 years later, and then put them down the road to have to sell to Disney. So all of these different things that have occurred over this time, it's not as simple as saying, well, look back, 2 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever. These were problems brewing for a very long time, and they brewed probably even further than even the Image stuff, because if Marvel had just said, you know what, you're right, let's bring back the Epic imprint, and let's give you guys some creator ownership. And let's put your skin in the game, and let's keep this stuff together, and let's keep you on board. Let's give you some of that merchandising cut. You guys you deserve it. You're selling through the roof. They never would have thought, yeah, let's leave. No, it would have been like, hey, this is great. We don't have to do all this other stuff. We can still stay here. We're getting respected. We're getting treated well. We're getting paid well. This is fantastic. And maybe you never even have Image formed, and maybe Marvel and then DC actually go on to bolster their creator-owned lineups. And now you still just have those two companies, but in a very different and healthier way. But they didn't want to do that because it's greed and it's all this arrogance in play, and they set the whole course for everything else.
Well, and it takes people with moral courage to stand up and say, you wanting to do that over there, it's not right for these reasons. What we should be doing is this over here for these reasons. So you have to be able to stand up for what's right and what you believe is the way to go, regardless of what the critics are saying about it. Not that you can't be open to feedback. Of course, we should always be open to feedback. And those of us who are making comics, working on comics, part of the business of it, whether you're in corporate comics or you're in indie comics or you're, an underground self-publisher working out of your garage, whatever it is, we all, if we're going to be successful, we need to be able to stand up for what we believe is right, regardless of what our critics, whatever the level they're at in the industry, what they're saying. And so I think that a lot of what the criticism you've gotten, Pete, over the years that I've been an Alterna customer is you will display moral courage and say, I'm doing it this way because I believe that it's right. I don't think it should be done that way because I don't believe that's right. And then you end up getting attacked for that because you dare to be the nail that sticks up out of the wooden deck. And
Yeah, hammer me
then
down.
so then a bunch of the proverbial 12 psychos on Twitter, they're monitoring for people who dare to stand up.
Well, it used to be squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? Then it became
Yeah.
squeaky wheel gets replaced.
Yes.
Because the value wasn't there anymore that they saw in anybody. And I'm not just applying that to myself, but I'm applying that across the board to a lot of creators and the way they were treated over the years. Again, this is the biggest reason to me that I saw being an observer from the outside and why I didn't go, no. You know what? Oh, yeah, comics get a bunch of this and that's and whatever's too. Yeah, I agree. This is the biggest reason that I said, no, that's not true. There's actual things going on in our own industry. How dare you actually blame the fans for the shit going on in our own houses? We should clean up what's happening here before you start saying, no, it's the fans' fault. The fans are upset. The fans are upset because we're screwing up. And even like I had nothing to do with it, but I'm like, yeah, I'll take some of the blame too, because we could all be doing something better and something different. We could all be engaging people in better ways. And the fact that so many creators were like, no way. And then corporate up top, especially, oh man, turning a blind eye and in some cases actually encouraging that kind of behavior.
Yes. And this is the point now where we're getting into like mid to late 2018, where I had a passing awareness of Alterna before that, but I was paying attention to the back and forth of the industry and the kind of the rise of Comicsgate and the response to it from the rest of the industry, and the start of the transition from a group of readers with common interests trying to get the attention of publishers and saying, this is what we would like you guys to do so that we can buy our product again, or so that we can stop reducing our pull list and go back to increasing our pull list. Here's what we'd like to see. It went from that to in mid to late 2018, you now have the beginnings of a marketplace where a bunch of people are using crowdfunding to publish their own books. And there's a bunch of comic book readers who are saying, okay, Marvel and DC are giving us double middle fingers, so we're not going to pay for that sort of treatment. These creators over here, and I include you, Pete, as one of them, these creators over here are not only not treating us disrespectfully, but they're actually wanting to engage with us. They're actually wanting to interact with us, the customers. So we're going to take the money we used to spend over there in corporate comics, and we're going to bring it here to the independent market. And specifically, we're going to bring it to these indie creators and publishers now that we're learning about, that we're discovering. And we're going to buy their books, and we're going to throw them our support. And so you were out there, Pete, among any publisher, you were the only one that I remember saying things like, what you guys who are trying to demonize these people who have been labeled Comicsgate, by the way, labeled Comicsgate by people who don't like them. So they thought they were smearing them with this label, and Comicsgate people decided to just take that and say, okay, you tried to mock us with this. We're going to turn that around, and we're going to wear it, proudly, and we're going to show you guys what you could have had with all this money, all this enthusiasm, all this loyalty, all of this ongoing support. It could have been yours. We tried to give it to you. We asked you to accept it. You gave us the middle finger, so now we're going to put it over here. And yeah, you can just keep calling us Comicsgate and watch what happens. And so you were the only guy, Pete, that I saw who stood up, and you were saying to Alterna creators, because you saw that people from corporate comics were blocking customers left and right and losing business for the companies that they were doing work for. And I remember you issuing a policy statement saying, along the lines of, at Alterna Comics, we do not block our readers. We do not run block lists against, tens of thousands.
If people
of
have unfortunate experiences with people and they feel the need that they have to block them. I mean, I had people
individual,
on an individual basis. Yeah. I'm not going to say anything about that. It is what it is. I've had over the years experiences with people that were, less than friendly. Mm-hmm. Some in cases that were very stalkery. So I would block an account, they would come up with a new one and that kind of thing. So eventually I was like, blocking doesn't really do a whole lot. I don't really care for it. But it was one of those things where if you felt, okay, you're having this really bad experience and you need to block this person and this and that, come to me, talk to me about the experience. And then, okay, if you got to do what you got to do, that's it. My door has always been open at Alterna. So whenever a creator has an issue with anything, they can let me know. Oftentimes I found that many creators don't do that, though. I think it's because, again, it's in that corporate mindset of, well, as soon as you let someone know that there's a problem, you're on a list, got to get rid of this guy soon. And it became very difficult for some people, I think, to actually address any issues with me because of that kind of, thinking maybe it was a trick or something. But the biggest problem that I had with the block list is because I got caught up in them and people would actually submit their books and I'd go, you have me blocked. And I'm like, you're submitting to the company. I'm blocked on Twitter. And they're like, oh, really? I have you blocked? And they're like, oh, you must have got caught in like this in the block list, blockchain. I forget what they called it at the time. And that was my first understanding of those things. And this was like 2016-ish. I'd say that started happening. So that's when I started putting in the block list policy too, was and then we publicly had announced that, even though it was there for a bit. And then creators that had agreed to it in private all of a sudden were offended that I had done that. And I was like, you agreed and championed this kind of mentality because you were like, it makes people feel, like for no reason at all that they've had some kind of bad experience with you, and that's not the case, and you don't want to make people feel that way. And I had this discussion with every one of them that all of a sudden protested it very publicly. I'm thinking, like, what's going on? And it felt like invasions of the body snatchers, that these people were not the people that I had talked to. And when we were getting attacked about the books and about me thanking readers, all I could think is the large majority of the books, I only really have one book in circulation at Alterna. It's The Chair. Even though my artist is a wackadoo, it's, I love all the readers that read the book. Yeah. As many people are finding out lately. So he really didn't do a whole lot of anything on the book other than do loose, sketchy pencils on the book. Refused to promote it at the time, refused to talk about it, refused to go to conventions. And this was long before anything. This was very early on. So he was, work for hire, and he treated it as such. He didn't want to really be a part of the book. So I did a lot of the heavy lifting with the book and the promotion and all that kind of stuff. But I found that all of these people were reading all of everyone else's books at Alterna. I'm the publisher, and they're coming to me and they're saying they love the book. They and I'm like, hey, thanks for reading. Which, I mean, why wouldn't you say that? Of course. So they're coming along. They're reading all these books at Alterna. They've always been very diverse. I hate using that word nowadays because it's become like this 4-letter word. But they abused, are. They're very diverse. There's all kinds of different creators involved. There's all kinds of different stories and characters. And we've always made it that way just because I always signed on to me what I thought would appeal to a lot of people and what would also appeal to me, so I could champion it in a very sincere way. I didn't just sign on things that I just thought would sell. I signed on things that I thought would sell because I would want to buy them. So it's a very different mentality than what some publishers use, which is why I'm always very proud of the books here. And then when all those creators, many of them decided to kind of stab me in the back about it, I'm like, I'm literally defending you and your readers right now. And you're turning around and telling me that I'm this hateful person. I've known you. In some cases, I knew these people for like 8 years. I knew you for 8 years. And now all of a sudden you're going to turn around and say these awful, horrible things about me just to what? Get in the good graces of some crazy person on Twitter who could care less about you and probably never supported anything you ever did and will never support you again. Meanwhile, I've been at your side. I'm sticking up for you right now. I'm sticking up for you and your readers right now. And instead of you going, no, this is wrong. Don't say this about our readers. I'm not making hateful books. These books are great. Pete's great. Well, whatever they want to say, it's up to them. They could have not said I was great. That's fine too. But don't crap on the readers and stick up for your books. And instead it just turned into this, I think like 8 or 10 of them, most of which already had their runs done. Made this big declaratives. I'm leaving Alterna now. It's like your book was done 4 months ago. Yeah, you're leaving Alterna now. What happened 4 months ago? I thought you left then.
The biggest thing I've noticed since I've come into the industry in 2010, and I came from my own businesses and a life in design and agency work, was just how unprofessional and bad business like so much of the industry is. There's such a lack of professionalism in so many people. There's flaky creatives, people that are rude and unprofessional in their behavior towards potential clients and potential customers. Just what we were talking about earlier with Marvel and DC and the fact that they wanted this, that, and the other audience. Just make 2 lines of comics, double your audience. It's dead simple. Put a spinner rack
with multiverses and everything they could do. Sure,
put a spinner rack in every audience, in every cinema. Where is the difficulty in the business decision there? Most of that comes down from the fact that we were talking about there's no passion for comics from the top down.
It's a complacency and everything else.
But all these things, business, professionalism, and exactly what Joe's talking about, like a moral compass. They all seem to be lost in so many areas of the comic book industry, and that's what shocked me most coming from business. I mean, I've always wanted to be in the comic book industry. I took my life to go and pay mortgages, and I went and did a different job for 25 years. But coming into it, that was the thing that shocked me the most, and it didn't take long to shock me. It
was shocking. I'm no longer shocked by it because I've observed it for so long now, but there was a time where it was shocking to me, which kind of takes me to the end of 2018 and beginning of 2019, where Pete, you were getting just absolutely dogpiled by people in the industry, people working for corporate publishers, people working for independent publishers, their fans were being sent after you. Whether it was Heather Antos or Jennifer de Guzman or Mark Waid, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. All these people who supposedly were all about compassion and tolerance and diversity, and here they are, basically trying to destroy by the way, Asian person.
That only matters when they want it to matter.
No, that sounds cynical, Pete. So you've got all these people who are dogpiling you, and so I would imagine that, and you correct me if I get this wrong, but I would imagine that at some point in there, late 2018, maybe early 2019, the thought might have entered your mind as a publisher, like, is this all really worth it? Did you ever have that? Did that occur to you?
There were a couple days in the middle of it, definitely. There was a couple days when I had far worse thoughts than that. But they were only ever thoughts. And they were only thoughts because of the fact that I have my amazing and supportive. I think she's the only person on earth who knows,
like, how bad things really got at that point. Yeah.
So, man, I get emotional about it still, because she knows so much. It's incredible. I don't know if I'm deserving of that, but I have it. I'm grateful for it. But then after taking some time away as well and coming back to it and seeing that the readers that were there and then the creators that still, because for a while it was every email I got was telling, and I got maybe like 60 to 70 within the span of 3 days. I got just people being like, I'm the worst of the worst, and creators, former, current, whatever it was. I can't believe you're this kind of person. I can't believe this. I can't believe that. Blah 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 blah. All these things, and I was like, I gotta just unplug from the internet. And I took a day or two or whatever it was off, and then I came back, and I couldn't believe the support from the readers and from the creators who stayed, and from all. That's what I came back to. I left it in this state of, this is just madness. This is insane. It was a lot of lies being spread, that I fired a letterer. I had fired Micah Myers as a letterer because he had a block list. I said, no. I got the emails to even prove that. And CBR ran with the story, and they barely did anything to correct it. I said, I got the emails and the Twitter DMs to prove the interaction that said, look, if you're going to keep using that type of thing, you know what I'll do to just avoid any, because he was already paid for at that point. I didn't want to screw out the guy that did the book. Yeah. I said, what we'll do is we'll just leave your Twitter handle off. This way people don't go to click on it, and then you're using this thing and they say, hey, what's going on here? Because like 12 or 15 people, that's what had occurred. We had promoted the book, and then they went to go follow him and said, I'm blocked. Yeah, I've never interacted with this person. So then I was like, are you using... I got in touch with Dave Swartz. The book was Feast or Famine. Yeah, I got in touch with Dave, and I said, hey, is Micah using a block list? Because I'm getting like 12 or 15 DMs here or whatever it is about the people never interacted with him, and they're blocked. And he said, I'll talk to him. I'll see what's going on. He's like, I don't think so. But he's like, that would be really weird if he's blocking that many people for no reason at all. So he talked to him. He said, yeah, he is using that. I said, okay, look, so we'll leave him off the promo. We won't tag him anymore. And, he can still be on the book. But let him know, though, I'm not really approving of that, because people thought it was this like hard line, like you'll lose your contract, you'll get blah, 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 all this other stuff. I won't rehire you. Like I would never hire on another book with Micah there, but I'm not going to punish because I don't hire those people onto those books. Like if Dave was using the block list, that would be different. He's the sole person there on the contract. Yeah. But because if it was his work for hire, I said, okay, you handle it how you want to handle it. If you want to replace him at some point, it's up to you. But we'll do this just to not have any drama come to your doorstep. Ha ha. So then, of course, Micah runs with it. He quits like 2 days later and then runs with the story that I fired him. And I was like, I didn't fire you, dude. You quit. You quit. I did everything within my power to just make it easier for you and your job. That even though you're running this completely stupid and asinine block list, because I told him, I asked him at the time, I said, anybody actually harassing you? Is anyone giving you a hard time? And he said, no one is. I was like, okay, no one's going to give you a hard time. I was like, if anybody does, just let me know. And, we'll work through it together. And if it's a serious thing, I'll even help you through, talking to law enforcement or something, anything to back up. And, I've got your back. Don't worry about it, Yeah. And that wasn't good enough. So he quit the book and then said that I fired him and then ran with it. And then everyone ate it up and said I was the worst of the worst. And I said, I got the emails to prove it. I had lawyers get in touch with CBR when they ran that story. And then they printed like a retraction / update, but never promoted that they did anything like that, of course. But I had to publicly threaten, take that down now, because otherwise we're going to have words with lawyers right now. And that was unreal to me that someone would just literally come along knowing full well that they are lying and then do that. And that's when it really hit me completely that all the stuff that's getting printed by these sites, they don't give a shit about these people. They are running with whatever. If they can do it to me, they're doing it to someone else too.
Yeah. And so you found yourself in a position now, let's say very end of 2018, early 2019, where you got dogpiled, and then you come out from under it, and you've got all the support coming in from readers. And it seems, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I get any of this incorrect, but it seemed to me like you, when you kind of came back into the mix, let's say, you took a short break, and then you got back into it, and then there was a point where it seemed like people who had been trying to take you out were kind of waiting to see what you were going to do. And it seemed to me like you were again displaying moral courage in the face of adversity, and saying, not only am I not going to give in to all of that, but I'm going to step forward and make sure that anybody who tries to come at me again are going to know that if you want to come at me, if you're going to punch, be ready for a counter punch.
Yeah, it was time for the Roadhouse rules.
That was the you be nice
until it's time to not be nice.
Well, what if da da da? Well, then you be nice. Well, what if da da da? Well, how long do we be nice? Until it's time to not be nice. And so for me, 2019 was the year where I saw Pete Simeti, the counter puncher. I didn't see you going after people, instigating problems, but I saw you responding to troublemakers who were trying to instigate problems with you, with your company, with Alterna creators. And I also saw...
I took one out of their playbook and I doubled down.
You doubled down in refusing to buckle. And I saw a big jump in Alterna sales. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I guess that would be accurate, yeah. But mostly I would say that had occurred from a lot of the direct sales, because after what had happened in 2018, I noticed a market decline, like 20 to 30% drop immediately from retailers. A bunch of retailers actually thought that we were Antarctic Press. I think it's because maybe all the Asian publishers look alike to them. But for one reason or another, they're like, yeah, you're the ones publishing Jawbreakers. I was like, we're in Alterna. Antarctic, it's like a place in the world.
Mm-hmm.
They're very different words.
Yeah, 2019 was a whole lot of idiots saying idiotic things, trying to take you out, trying to take out various people affiliated with Comicsgate. It seemed like it seemed like things got worse instead of better as far as that's concerned. And it seems like, if my memory serves, that you became more vocal. And it's not that you changed your principles. For as long as I've known you, and when I did my homework on you back in 2018, it seemed like you had been a principled man for as long as you'd been in the public eye. But you found yourself, from my view on the outside, you found yourself in these situations where you were forced to essentially make declarations of principle. And then stand on those principles publicly, whereas before you were just running your business privately.
Yeah, I'd rather just do my thing, lead by example, that kind of thing. I'd rather not try to be declarative with anything.
Exactly.
Because as one of my heroes said a long time ago, I hate people that preach. I hate people that preach to me. But this is where, and then that's a Stan Lee quote. So I don't like doing that kind of a thing, but this is the world that we're in now, where people want to know, where do you stand on certain things? And where I stand is essentially, look, if we can all just respect each other, fantastic. And that's it. That's all I ask for. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care what you look like. I don't care your race, your creed, your gender, your whatever. I don't really care about much of anything other than just be respectful of each other. That's all. Yeah. It's not that hard. And a lot of people can't do that. And that's why I think we have a lot of problems in the world, unfortunately, and they extend past comics. But so I digress. Anyway, about the whole thing in terms of just the way you have to, I guess, make some kind of a line in the sand about certain things. And my line in the sand, it was really funny. My line in the sand was about creative freedom, expression, and anti-censorship with storytelling and the arts. One day I had expressed a sentiment like that, and someone came at me and said, oh, so you agree with Comicsgate, huh? And they were trying to I said, if that's Comicsgate, then sign me up, baby. Because seriously, what the hell? Like you're against those things?
It was an educational moment.
These people are fools.
I'm like, wait, that's bad.
Something I do notice about your responses is they're always exceptionally polite and professional, which makes it very difficult for anyone to move past that.
Well, it's just not in my nature.
You stop people in their tracks.
They get frustrated with that sometimes, but it's not in my nature to get really aggressive or vulgar or whatever with someone coming at me. It's more my nature to kind of, playful de-escalation if I can. Sometimes you can't do that though. So sometimes I have to make the declarative of like, nope, there's the line. Don't cross that line. And if you do, I'm going to blow your ass out of the water. So just, don't do that. Don't make me do that. It's that kind of a thing. But I rarely have ever had to go that far with anything. But it's something that it's not in my nature. It's just, I'm not a mean person. I'm not a person that wants to necessarily get in someone's face about things, but it doesn't mean that I can't. It doesn't mean that I won't. And people oftentimes, I think along just everyone, they mistake kindness for weakness. And that's just simply not the case. I think it takes an inordinate amount of strength sometimes to be kind in the face of complete stupidity and just outright, sometimes evil, in terms of like telling people that you're the worst of the worst, and they don't even know you, and they're trying to ruin your life, and they're trying to make it so you can't work, and they're trying to destroy everything that you've worked for, and they have no idea who the hell you are. They just saw someone tweet something about something or whatever, and then have decided, nope, that you must be this person who's basically on par with a convicted child murderer. And it's what's wrong with you? We're just making comics. Even if you draw a picture that they think is offensive, and then you get people actually within the industry trying to censor your ability to create art, all I could think is you're in the wrong field. If you really want to censor creativity on any level, how dare you consider yourself a champion of the creative arts of any kind, let alone anything else. But again, this is where we find ourselves.
Fine eye offends thee, cut it out.
That's the job of authoritarian, totalitarian governments, and that's the job of their propaganda and censorship departments. It's not the job of people who are supposed to be making artistic work.
So, without getting too deep, the way to control the masses is not with army or with police or with security guards. It's with self-censorship. That's the way you control the masses.
Well, and that actually ties into where I was going with 2019, where it seems like things were crazy in 2016, crazier in 2017, just insane by the end of 2018. And then it seemed to me like 2019 took insanity to a whole new level, which
they
brings
just didn't
us...
think that I would meet them at that level, though.
Right.
Crazy the crazy.
But so 2019 is going through, and Alterna just keeps racking up more and more sales. So that brings us into 2020, where obviously the entire world went crazy with
everything.
The virus that shall not be named. So in 2020 was a year of just pure chaos across the board in the comics industry. And yet there's Alterna Comics, the little engine that could, just chugging along, still increasing revenues. And I was looking at it, by this time I'd been a long-term customer, and I was buying everything Alterna was putting out. And I was trying to, get people reading Alterna Comics. That I think by 2019, I had taken the Alterna ambassador thing seriously, and I was just saying, this company is too good, and these creators are exactly the kind of creators that the comic book industry needs. And this, as a customer, these are the types of creators I want to see working. These are the types of comics I want to see out in the world. And regardless of which ones a person likes or doesn't like, I just want more of these books out there. So I'm going to do whatever I can to try and make that happen. And so that's, like I said, I've been stockpiling Alterna Comics, knowing that at some point after I launched my company, I would be establishing a public platform, and then I would be able to basically do free advertising for Alterna. But at the same time, I'd be able to give Alterna Comics out and just make sure that more people in the world were reading them. And so for people in the show who weren't here
you
early,
can be honest with me, Joe. You can be honest with me. It's okay. You saw the paper shortage coming, long before. And then when the toilet paper shortage hit, you were like, I'm all set.
Yeah.
Just dampen them a little bit, you know?
Yeah,
You're good
none
to
of
go.
that. None of that nasty coated stuff. None of those shiny comics. We got some
No,
nice
no.
newsprint.
No,
It's
no.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Only the finest texture for these Thunder Buns. But so basically, for people who missed the beginning of the show, I'm just going to say quickly, and then we'll get back to the conversation. In this show, there's different facts that we're learning about Alterna Comics and about Pete, and so for everybody who catches the replay on this, we're gonna do a trivia question on next week's show, and it'll be about what we talked about today. So you've got a chance next week when we pose the trivia question during the show. You'll get the chance to post the answer in the chat, and the first person to post the correct answer will win a bundle of Alterna Comics. And I've got a very wide selection, so I'll basically say, hey, do you want stuff that's intended for mature readers? Do you want all ages comics? Do you want like teen plus? What genre do you like? And based on your answers, then I'll put together a bundle. I'll send it out to you out of my own collection, and I'll pay for shipping. And that's that. So so if you missed the beginning of the show, you can watch the replay, and that way you get a chance to win a bunch of free comics. So back into the conversation, Pete. We find ourselves in 2020, and we're, let's say, middle of the year, maybe towards the fall or so, and Diamond had shut down their entire operation for a period of time. DC and Marvel were in chaos.
Yeah, Diamond had done that around, I'd say, maybe like late March, and then by April 15th. And I picked the day because it's April 15th. It's easy to remember, but that was the day that we declared we broke away from Diamond.
Nice. And
that we would not be using them anymore. At that point in time, it was based on information of them, first of all, not responding to anything for weeks. We already had an interim brand manager for about a year and a half. Coincidentally, around the same exact time I got piled on back in August, September 2018. We all of a sudden got switched out with another brand manager who just didn't give a crap about anything we did.
Interesting.
And we never got a permanent brand manager since. That was the first time in the 12 years we were with Diamond that had ever happened. So it just felt like, what's the point of being here? Our direct sales are larger than what was coming through Diamond anyway. Yeah. And we had all the infrastructure in place to just take care of everything without them. We were out of newsstand at that point too. I left all distribution by, I think, May or June 2020. Comixology, book distribution, they were all just awful in one way or the other. Yeah. So our digital sales are better direct than they were through Comixology. Our graphic novel sales are better direct than they were through our book distributor. And our single issue sales are better than they were through Diamond. I mentioned this before, that every publisher out there, if they sold direct, they could actually cut their cover price in half, sell to like 70 or 60% of the audience, and then the remaining whatever 30-40% that was left, they could actually cut the cover price further in half, give a 50% discount to the retailer, and make more money than going through Diamond. Yep. So it's interesting, but many publishers don't want to do stuff like that. It's a risk, right? This is the comic industry. They don't take risks. They just find one thing that works, and then they do it as much as they can until everyone hates it. Yeah. Whether that's a character, a business strategy, whatever it may be, they do it till everyone hates it. And then they, ruin something else along the way and drip that dry too. So with Alterna, we shifted really just completely away from anything that would be considered a traditional model in comics. And it's been great. I looking back a year or so, a little bit more than a year, I would never go back to the way it was. And this is a better model too, incorporating crowdfunding with creators here, because they can actually earn more money this way and keep on growing what they're doing, and in a healthier lifestyle too, as opposed to the way it is in the current traditional system where, I mean, you lose your freaking mind being a comic creator. and you never come up for air, and you're always constantly told that it's more about, well, what did you do lately, as opposed to, well, did you actually get the time to promote and market what you created in a proper way and engage the audience and have a healthy relationship with those who purchase your product and actually communicate with them? And then, hey, you can even converse about what would you guys like? What kind of stories are you interested in? And then maybe as a creative person, think those are the kinds of stories I'll make. Yeah. In comics, you don't really get the chance to have those kinds of conversations. But now we're actually having the ability to do such things. Even something as simple as before we would have mini-series numbering, and it would be volume 1, like 1 to 3 or 1 to 4. Now we can just go, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in continuous, just ongoing numbering. You couldn't do that really in the Diamond system, because if the number got a little too high, that was a bad thing. Yep. The further you got away from number 1, the less, no matter how good the book is, no matter who was reading it, no matter what, your sales would get worse. You had to be a certain person. You had to be like maybe one of 5 people in the industry to have a chance of ever selling more of like an issue 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 than you did of the number 1. It was usually just precipitous falling, from 1 just into the cancellation territory. But now we're finding that we can actually grow a readership away from distribution. It's just such a weird backwards industry, but of course it works out that way because it's been so backwards for so long.
Yeah. Well, so would you say at the end of it all that if understanding that, the consequences of you standing up and doing what you feel is right, saying the things you believe need to be said, even though, that can sometimes come with negative consequences, sometimes it comes with positive benefits. So when you look back at the last few years and knowing that you've had different opportunities to either take a stand for something or not, is there anything that you would have done, you think you would have done differently? And how do the scales weigh out with the negative consequences versus the positive benefits for you as a publisher after the last 3 years or so?
Yeah, I don't think I necessarily would have done things differently, but I would have taken things differently. And what I mean by that is some of the, I have no other word for it other than to say betrayal. Some of the betrayals that came my way with readers and even some retailers too, that I thought, you guys know me, why don't you stand up for me instead of dogpiling and joining in on me and just saying, oh, I didn't know he was like this. It's like, yeah, because I'm not like that. That's why you didn't know I was like that, because I'm not that way. Instead of being so hurt by some of those people, I would go back and say, who gives a crap? Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you, that kind of a thing. Yep. As opposed to really taking it personally and then having it affect me in such a way that it really did make me feel like I had truly done something, and I should just kind of quit comics, and I should just, run into the woods and just live off the land. Because that's how it felt, for like a solid couple of days. It was really just contemplating every single thing I've done. And at that point, I think it was 12 or 13 years. And it just felt like, that's it. This is the end. Everything I've worked for, everything I was working towards, we were doing so well. We were making headway. We were making possibly a change that could really have ripple effects throughout the entire industry in terms of the affordability of books, and then also the attitude of how to treat readers and creators as well. Because at Alterna, it's 100% creator owned, for those that don't know. So even if they sell a sticker or they want to make a shirt or they want to even sell movie rights, that's theirs. Well, I don't get a cent. Alterna doesn't make any money. People go, well, how would you make money if they do such things? If a movie gets picked up, and how would you make money? Well, you print more books. We're a book publisher. So as long as the book is here, we print more books. And if it's not here, it's not here. C'est la vie. There's other books that come along. And then at the profit split, Alterna, it's 80-20. So the creators get 80% of the profit. We only get 20% of the profit. And I encourage creators all the time. They think, some of the ones back in the day thought that I was trying to pull like a fast one. I'd be like, look, promote your brand, promote your books, promote yourself. Don't just expect me to be the face of your book. Build up yourself too. Don't take this time to just, say, oh, well, Pete should do all of that. Alterna should just do all of that, because now all you're doing is saying, well, this company is going to be known for these things, and you'll never take those readers with you. You'll never build up your own brand. You'll never build up your name. So I would always encourage, get in on it with the promotion. I'm there too, but you have to care about what you're making and let people know. And some people thought that was me trying to get away with, helping them promote. But I'm like, no, this is for your benefit. This is so you can grow and succeed and thrive, as opposed to you're constantly starting at zero, no matter what you do, where you do it.
Yeah.
And now we've got creators, obviously, that do those kinds of things, and it's wonderful to see. So it's just the kind of thing where that mindset across the board, I thought we had the chance to really start changing a lot of those things. And that was a foolish thought on my part. So I don't really have foolish thoughts like that anymore. I'm more concerned with Alterna, with our readers, with our creators, and any missteps that anybody else wants to take, I welcome them. Go for it. If the X-Men want to dress how they want to dress, and they want to sell 10,000 different issues that are just like that, hey, do it. I welcome it.
If you want to put Iceman in a dress, well, by golly, put him in a dress.
Yeah, why stop there? There's crazier things they could dress in. Make them all naked all the time.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Nothing matters.
Nothing. That's the thing. Nothing matters.
They show it with their publishing decisions. It's just stories. It's just comics. It's not like it's important to anybody. Yeah. It's not like people invest their lives reading these stories. It's not like they're inspired by these stories or encouraged when they're having a bad day. It's not like they get a pick me up from reading an inspirational story that just so happens to be in a comic book format.
Well, these aren't entertaining books. These are just lectures, right? With pictures. So go for it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it till you burn everything to the ground. And as long as the retailers want to buy it up and they want to flood the shelves with it and not put their foot down too. And retailers out there, you guys, seriously, what are you doing filling your whole store with some of this crap, thinking, well, if I don't fill it, someone else is going to buy it. So what? Let them go buy it. Let them go get it elsewhere. Put your foot down. Stop complaining about it in these little secret Facebook groups and whatnot that you have about all these things you hate that happens. And actually just put your money where your mouth is and stop flooding the shelves with that, and put other books on there. Organize your stores so that when someone walks in, they can find books by genre. Organize your stores so that they're not just publisher, but actually horror, sci-fi, superhero, this, that, or whatever. This way, someone that doesn't know what the hell Alterna is from Marvel or DC or Image or Dark Horse or whatever can actually go and say, I know I like horror. Let me go to the horror section. And that's how you'll make more sales.
Yep.
But actually, though, don't do that. Don't do any of those things. And then when all the stores close, when all the publishers go under, and they all go towards crowdfunding and direct sales, and you guys can all sit around and complain on Facebook, like you always do, and lament about everyone that betrayed you and this and that, instead of actually saying, you know what, things are wrong. Let's address them. Let's reassess what's happening here, and let's pivot.
And there are retailers who have been beat up. I don't think. At least I hope not nearly as bad as you got beat up in 2018, 2019. But there have been retailers who have tried to say more or less what you just said. Yeah,
it's like 5% of them.
And they get dogpiled by the other retailers, in some cases by creators and publishing executives. And then most of them, if they speak up once, they usually don't do it again. I only know of a few who will continue to speak out and say what they believe and stand up for what they think is right, because they do want to try and do something to save the industry. And so they're trying. But I just think that we're at a point, and I think we're past the point where there will be pockets of the industry that can be saved. Yep. And that's the most. I think there will be pockets of it.
Comics are going nowhere. Comics are here to stay. They'll be here forever. The comic industry as we know it, I don't know. I could care less at this point. The whole industry could burn to the ground. Comics are going to be here forever. Creators are going to keep making awesome stories. And if anything, the less we have of the industry with its little tentacles getting into everything and in the way of everyone, the better.
Yeah.
Like, let the indie creators run free. Let them create awesome stories, and let the cream rise to the top.
Ooh, yeah. Well, speaking of indie creators, Russ and I happen to be indie creators, and we're working on a little book called The Outliers. And it's going to be published by this little indie publishing company called Alterna Comics, run by yours truly. And we'd like to end our shows, Pete, with showing off Outliers art whenever possible. We like to show customers, potential customers, I should say, because the book is in process, it's in production, so nobody's actually bought it yet. But our potential customers, we like to show them the work that's being done and the time and the effort and the care that is going into telling stories that we hope will entertain them. So, Russ, how about if we look at pages 7 and 8 today?
7 and 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, actually, you know what? Since Pete's here, let's start with page 1, and we'll just go to page 8. Page 1 to page 8.
Okay.
Normally, we show a couple of pages, but since we got a special guest, we'll give the chat a special treat. We'll show off 8 pages. So these are finished pencils, and all of our chapters are they're 24 pages, and each volume will have multiple chapters. So volume 1 of The Outliers will have chapter 1, chapter 2, and the stories are structured so that every chapter is a standalone story, beginning, middle, and end, but it has subplots that carry on into future chapters. So every 24-page chapter builds on the ones that came before them. So what we have in each chapter, a preview page where it's a one-image distillation of what's happening in that chapter that you're about to read. And this is where our credits will go. We'll have our title logo up in at the top left, and then we'll have our production credits down along the bottom. And the formatting will be very reminiscent of Bronze Age comics.
I like that opening splash. It's very Buscema-ish.
That is
in the action.
He is a huge influence for both Russ and myself, so I'm very happy to hear that. So right in chapter 1, we introduce our superhero team, the Outliers. They're a brand new team. They're on their first mission, and it doesn't go anything like they expected it to. So let's go to the next page, Russ.
You want me to go through all of them?
Yeah. So we'll just quickly.
You can just keep on clicking through. That's cool. Spend like 5-10 seconds a page.
Yeah, we'll just quickly.
Because you don't want to show too much.
No, we're not gonna.
So I just flick through to 7.
Okay.
There you go.
They're very nice. Jeez, man, this is very nice. It takes me back.
That's the idea, yeah.
That's definitely the idea. We're doing a kind of a fusion of comics from Marvel and DC in the 70s and 80s, the types of storylines, the types of characters, and we're fusing that with modern technology, the best of modern comic book production without any of the worst elements that are present in the comic book industry.
Well, since
today.
I can't publish it, you'll just have a reader in me.
There you go. So, yeah, for those who have been following along in the chat, this is the moment where a couple of our heroes learned that the guy that they were supposed to apprehend, there's a lot more to him than what they were told in their mission briefing. So I hope you guys get a good look at what we're doing here, and I hope you guys are enjoying the process, getting to see the art behind the scenes. We've got a lot more that we will be showing as the weeks and months unfold ahead. So if you guys want if you're not already subscribed to the channel, you can go ahead and subscribe and give the show a like if you enjoyed it. and we'll continue to produce a lot more content. And Russ on his channel will be showing vlogs of the process of putting these pages together, and you'll get to see how the penciling and the inking is done.
Very nice.
Yeah,
I'd like to show one thing my wife just gave me. She's making sketch cards for the art auction on Saturday.
Oh, nice.
This is our kitty Lovey. That's adorable.
Yeah. Thank you, Amanda, for putting the link in the chat. Pete is doing an art auction this Saturday, May 8th, and starting at noon Eastern. Is that right, Pete?
Yeah, we're starting. We're doing one from noon to 4 Eastern, and then we're doing one that starts at 9 o'clock at night. And any artist out there, you're free to join it. And it doesn't mean you have to donate whatever it is has to go towards whatever I'm selling is going towards Lovey. But I want to have other people there too. This way they can sell their stuff. And just in case, I mean, everybody out there right now is struggling with something one way or the other. So if you want to try to raise some money to cover anything that you're currently struggling with, to feel free to bring some art, and there's going to be great people there already, and it'd be even nicer if you were there too, and lots of awesome people are going to be watching as well. And the same thing extends to the both of you. If you guys would like to pop in and sell anything that you've got, go for it.
Appreciate that. That's very kind of you to offer. So anybody in the chat, if you're an animal lover, you'll probably relate to Pete and his wife got hit with some unexpected vet bills that were quite expensive. And so the auction, the initial idea was to run an auction, raise some funds, pay for the vet bills. The cat is doing well, right?
Yeah, she's doing great. I'd say she's like 95 to like 100% her normal self. And this was last week when she had everything done. And she was just, she was doing what we call when she runs around the house like a nut job. She's doing the Thundercats intro. And
nice.
That's what we
call it. All right. Well, that's good to hear. So, everybody, that's our show for today. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Pete, for joining us today. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks to chat.
Thank you, chat. You guys, I say this. If I don't say it every week, then I certainly intend to. If you guys don't show up, it's not a show. Then it's just Russ and I having a conversation, which we enjoy and we have frequently. But it's when you guys show up that it becomes a show. And we very much appreciate you being here. You guys could be spending your time doing anything else, but you choose to spend it with us, and we're very grateful for that. So I hope you guys go out and make a great day, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Bye.